Yeah. Your boy D47 all day for real, popping off as much rugby league information as possible. Right now, the final of 6 straight wooden spoons by Parramatta. In 1961, they got their 6th consecutive wooden spoon, and as per always, watching this video all the way through to the end so you don't miss any crucial rugby league information. And for long-suffering Eels fans, finally the light at the end of the tunnel arriving in 1961. So, like I said, they did still get the wooden spoon again in 1961, but this one was a reasonable improvement on the previous 4 years. I said previously in the 1956 wooden spoon video, which Parramatta also got, that was the first of the 6 straight wooden spoons. I said in 1956 that they actually played well at different stages of the season, and I thought were unlucky to only just get the wooden spoon. Well, a similar sort of situation in 1961. So the two bookends, so to speak, the first and last of the 6 wooden spoons, 1956 and 1961, nowhere near as horrendous as the middle 4, 1957 and 1960. So light at the end of the tunnel, and they actually pulled off a couple of outstanding victories early in the season in 1961 too. So let's dive straight into the stats. So, as per always, 18 games in the Australian Rugby League season back then, and Parramatta winning 3 and losing 15 in 1961 to end up in last place with 6 competition points. In attack, they scored 203 points, and in defence conceded 365, so the for and against minus 162 points. Okay, not very good, but much better than the previous 4 seasons where their defence was over 400 points and the for and against was like well over minus 200 points. It was an improvement on that at least. And a bit of an improvement in the try and point scorers department too. The top try scorer for Parramatta in 1961, 2 players, both getting 6 tries each. Kevin Hole and Brian Cox, 2 players at least did a little something for them in the way of tries. And in the point scorers department, a bit of an improvement there too. The player Keith Griffiths, he got 2 tries, 26 goals for a total of 58 points in 1961. Remembering tries used to be 3 points at the time, and that was an improvement because the previous season, 1960, he was also Parramatta's leading point scorer. 1960 getting no tries, 28 goals, 56 points. This time he got 2 tries, so he crossed the try line, and he got 58 points altogether. So a bit of an improvement there from him too. And this improvement transpiring into the first 3 rounds of the season, where they actually played very well the first 3 rounds of the season. 1961 round 1, they lost to St George 18 points to 8 at Cogra. And if you've watched the previous few videos, you would have heard me say in those videos, the previous few seasons when Parramatta had to play St George, they were getting 40, 50 or 60 points putting on them. It was against the St George team who won 11 straight grand finals, the greatest rugby league team of all time. But still, you never want to be conceding 50 and 60 points. Well, this time, they only conceded 18 points, losing to St George 18-8 in round 1. Then in round 2, wow, the moment in the sun came along in round 2. Round 2, 1961, Parramatta 43, Newtown 10, believe it or not. And in that game, Parramatta racked up 9 tries. And if probably used to hearing me say how Parramatta were getting beaten by those sort of huge scorelines. Well, this time they actually won a game 43 points to 10, scored 9 tries, and with 4-point tries, that would have been 52 points to 12 win over Newtown. 1961 round 2. Then, another outstanding victory in round 3, where they had to go to Leichhardt, which is Balmain's home ground at the time, extremely difficult place for visiting teams to go and play, and they emerged with a 9 points to 6 win at Leichhardt Oval of all places, 1961 round 3. So, the first 3 rounds of the season, Parramatta actually played very well. 2 excellent wins, 1 respectable loss, but unfortunately then the bad old habits crept back in, and unfortunately they lost the next 10 consecutive games, not by as bigger scorelines as in previous seasons, but they did still lose 10 straight games, which obviously put them in great danger of yet another wooden spoon, before finally in round 14 they finally snapped out of it and beat Eastern Suburbs 13 points to 9, but that would be the last game they'd win for the season. And in the remaining games of the season, well, they still had every opportunity to avoid the wooden spoon, like they were giving it their all. At least they weren't losing by much. 1961 round 15, they had a narrow loss to South Sydney 22-15. Then, unfortunately, the most embarrassing moment came along in 1961 round 16, where they were walloped by Manly 42 points to 7, and that game Manly put 10 tries on them, so it would have been 52 points to 8 with 4-point tries being 3 points at the time. So, not only did that put them perilously close to getting their 6th straight wooden spoon, Also humiliating, losing to Manly of all teams, because we all know about Manly and Parramatta's everlasting, perennial, acrimonious arch rivalry. Manly and Parramatta's arch rivalry, second only to the Rabbitohs Roosters arch rivalry. That's the only arch rivalry that's worse. So not just the fact that they lost by a huge scoreline, 42 points to 7, the fact that it was against Manly of all teams. But then no, they were still giving it their all. They were still going down swinging, still fighting. 961 round 17. Parramatta just losing to North 18-15, 3 points, a single unconverted try. And then in the last round, they were outclassed by Western Suburbs, losing 28 points to 8. So with all that said, in 1961, Parramatta eventually ended up with the wooden spoon. Just like in 1956, where they also won a few games early in the season before eventually getting the spoon, because they just couldn't quite do enough to avoid it. Same sort of situation in 1961, but those two seasons, 1956 and 1961, even though they did end up with the wooden spoon in both of them, nowhere near as humiliating as the 1957, 58, 59, 1960 wooden spoons, which you can also scroll through this playlist to watch. So there you go. Oh, and before we forget, of course, in 1962 they finally stopped getting the wooden spoon. One of the St George Dragons legends, when they were in the middle of their 11 straight grand final run of 11 straight grand final victories, one of the St George legends, his name was Ken Kearney, and he was given the task of going over to Parramatta and improving their fortunes, and that he definitely did. The next year in 1962, 1963, 1964 and 1965, so the next 4 straight seasons, Parramatta actually made the finals. They didn't win the comp, didn't even make any grand finals, but at least they made the final series for 4 straight years to give a bit of redemption to their long-suffering fans. So there you go. 1961 wooden spoon popped off out of the way, so finally it's going to be a different team getting it next up in 1962. And in 1962 wooden spoon, stay tuned, because we've got one of those situations where the wooden spoon comes down to the very last round of the season to decide who got that 1962 wooden spoon. Obviously not Parramatta, obviously someone else, but yeah, down to the very last game of the season to see who got it. So stay tuned for that. And if you're still watching all the way through to the end, thank you so much for ongoing brilliant support. Much appreciated. Your boy all day, handling that business. AM, PM, pop off on the grind, D47, toodaloo.